That wasn't. That wasn't. There we go. That bell wasn't quite as wimpy as it was this week. Welcome to Downtown Rotary. My name is Mark DeGraff, and I'm your Rotary punching bag for this year. Today we'll start our meeting with the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
And Joni Underwood is going to do our Rotary Minute and guest introductions. While she's approaching, our August featured charity is Grace Med. You may be seated. Grace Med here in Topeka. Their mission is to show and share the love of Jesus Christ by providing compassionate, accessible, high-quality care for residents in the communities that they serve. And here's Joni.
Good afternoon. We have two guests today, and I will introduce them, and I ask that when they're introduced that they stand and stay standing until everyone has been introduced. Our first guest is Kelly Trates, and she is a potential member. And Brent, you got to kind of push this up and get her as part of our family membership. And then our other potential member is Jo Shaw, and she is a law clerk with Palmer Law Group and a guest of Nicole Revenos. So welcome. I kind of blew that. I forgot that we have this higher. And then on the Rotary Minute, I wanted to share with you a happening. And I love all of the things that Rotary Club and our club accomplishes. But we have a domino effect, and I wanted to share with you that as part of our mentoring program at Highland Park, I invited a friend whose husband had recently passed away, and we were needing more volunteers to help the students learn how to interview for jobs and scholarships and that. So I invited her to help at Highland Park High School. And she came. And she had a wonderful experience, was very positive about it. I haven't been able to recruit her for Rotary yet. But after she did that experience, she just left. And I didn't know where she went. Well, she went to the art department at Highland Park High School. And she talked to the art instructors, and she asked them if they would have any need for stained glass equipment. Well, that is a class that they didn't have then. They made jewelry and they did a few ceramic types of things, but they had wanted a stained glass class, and she helped that happen because her now deceased husband had a basement full of stained glass equipment and glass that she donated to Highland Park High School, and they now have a stained glass class. So I think that's an example of the domino effect, that we never know what's going to happen when we just do a little thing. So I encourage you to think about the little things that you can do to help have a domino effect. Thank you.
Thank you, Joni. It occurred to me that today is not only the 2nd of August, but it's also our first Thursday in August. So today is National Chili Dog Day, as the first Thursday in August. And it's also by date known as All or Nothing Day, or Carpe Diem Day. Now our joke this week, we'll let you determine which one of those 2 day of the weeks this fits with. But a teenage boy asks his dream date to prom, and he is thrilled when she says yes. First he goes to rent his tux, and there's a long line. Finally he gets it rented. Then he goes to the flower shop, and the line is more than double the tux shop line. But he waits through the line and gets flowers ordered. Lastly, he goes to the limo shop, and the line is even longer. After what seems like forever, he's fortunate to still get a limo reserved for their big night. Finally, the prom rolls around, and they are having a great time together. After dancing to a song, his girlfriend asks him to get her a glass of punch. So he heads over to the punch table, and there is no punchline. Today, we will
You had it.
Grace. There you go. Pardon that.
That's why you're the punching.
Pardon that pregnant pause there. So please join me in toasting. This week we're going to toast the Rotary Club of Lawrence, Kansas. They have 190 members. They're District 5710, just like we are. President Derek Kwan. And if you haven't met Derek, he is Executive Director of the Lead Center at KU, and a wonderful, wonderful guy. They were chartered in 1916 by our club in our second year, and they will celebrate 104 years this year. So please join me in toasting the Rotary Club of Lawrence, Kansas. Here, here, here. We have district team training coming up Saturday, August 18th from 8:30 to 1. It is free. It is great leadership training for everyone. Did I mention it's free? They have mimosas and Bloody Marys there. Did I mention those are free? We have attending from our club, District Governor Blanche Parks, Susan Alexander, Leo Espinoza, Grant Glenn, Linda Ireland, Carol Jordan, Stan Martindale, Nicole Revenant, Yano Ross, Joni Underwood, and Eugene Williams. And if you'd like to join them, there are still plenty of spaces, and we'd love for you to go. Today we have a couple of new Red Badge members in attendance that we'd like to award their Red Badges. Lynette Jo Beck, would you please approach the... We appreciate David's years of service as a past president, and he continues to be very, very active with youth and Rotary Youth Exchange, and we welcome you to the club as well, and are excited about you being in the club. Thank you.
Thank you.
And Jeff Pavone, please approach. Thank you, Jeff. Welcome. And Jeff is a newcomer to Topeka, I believe. And
3 months.
3 months now.
3 months.
Okay.
Yeah.
And working to manage the Cyrus Hotel.
Correct.
And
this is why I was at the site today, so I'm a little underdressed.
Working. And we appreciate you in the club, and
Thank you.
we're excited for all the great things you're going to do in the community.
Appreciate it. Thank
Welcome.
you.
Folks, you're in for a treat today. It's my honor to introduce David Beck, who is going to introduce our speaker. I will tell you that he suggested a book called Orbiting the Giant Hairball to me over lunch, and I can't wait for his presentation today. David?
Thank you, President. It's my pleasure to introduce a longtime friend of mine as our speaker today. I first met Marvin Stottlemire when we were both serving time in Leavenworth. That's true. Fortunately, we were not inmates, but both of us had jobs there. I worked with Marvin's wife, Becky, and Lynette and I got to know Marvin through that connection. Even though I've known Marvin a long time, I learned a lot about him that I didn't know when I was researching this introduction. Because of his varied interests and activities, Marvin has been called a Renaissance man. He's an experienced litigation attorney, an outstanding classroom instructor, and an award-winning amateur actor. He's also a trained mediator and an experienced group facilitator. Marvin grew up in Oregon. He joined the Air Force in 1963, serving in Texas and Germany. After the Air Force, he began his college education and married his first and only wife, Rebecca. In 1970, he graduated from the University of Oregon and won a fellowship to Rice University. And upon receiving his PhD in 1975, he took a position teaching political science at Louisiana State University, Shreveport. And then upon achieving tenure and promotion to associate professor, he resigned and enrolled in the University of Kansas School of Law, where he graduated in 1984. In 1984, he began his private practice of law in Leavenworth. And while in Leavenworth, he worked in private practice and then served as the city attorney for the city of Lansing. In 1988, he went to work for the Kansas Department of Health and Environment, where he served as director of the Office of Legal Services. During that time, he was very active in the Kansas Public Health Association, where he served 2 years as president. In 2000, he became assistant director of the KU Public Management Center, and he is an adjunct associate professor in the Department of Preventive Medicine at the KU School of Medicine. In addition to his professional activities, Marvin is an accomplished amateur actor appearing in community theater productions throughout the region. He has been a member of Topeka Civic Theater's Laughing Matters Improv Comedy Company for 20 years and is the founder of Topeka Civic Theater's Senior Class, an improv comedy company made up entirely of actors over age 55. Marvin owns and operates Laugh to Learn and has helped scores of organizations develop and improve a sense of community and improve communication and creativity through creative play. So in other words, he's a doctor and a lawyer, and he can act like an Indian chief. Please welcome Marvin Stottlemire.
I'm a little embarrassed when I hear that introduction. I think, come on. And then I realize I wrote it. It's on my website, and believe it or not, almost all of it is true. I like to tell people I have enough education to cause cancer in lab rats. I also want to warn you that the award-winning actor doesn't mean like I won an Emmy. I have 2 awards. The first one I got was at Civic Theater for the best performance by a male in a minor role. So a little truth in advertising there. But you don't put that kind of stuff on your website. You just tell people that when you get up so that they don't expect too much. About 25 years ago, I had an experience that at the time seemed insignificant, but has led down the path to bring me to standing before you today. I signed up for an improvisational comedy class at Topeka Civic Theater. Because of that, I was accepted into Laughing Matters, now called Laugh Lines. How many people have seen Laugh Lines? Yay! Oh, cool. And because of that, I asked Shannon if I could start an improv company of actors over the age of 55, and he said yes. And because of that, I was cruising around the internet looking for activities for my senior class, and I ran across an organization called the Applied Improvisation Network, AIN. AIN is an international organization. They are having their meeting I think next week in Paris, and I can't afford to go. But they are a group of people, mostly performers, who have discovered that the skills we learn to perform improvisational comedy are relevant to every walk of life. Every walk of life can benefit from the skills we learn in improvisational comedy. This is pretty well accepted around the world. In AIN, I have met people literally from around the world. We had people from 30 countries at our last conference. These are people who are doing what I'm trying to get into doing here in Topeka and have done with some success, who are using improvisational concepts to teach leadership, teamwork, and creativity. Now, we have 3 rules that we use, or you might call them guiding principles for improvisational comedy, and as I explain them to you, you tell me if you don't think these are skills that would be relevant where you work and where you live. The first rule is called yes and, sometimes referred to as do not deny. The concept of yes and says that I accept what is offered to me and I add to it. Think about yes, but. The word but is a huge eraser. It erases whatever goes before it, right? Look, I'm not one to criticize, but did you ever hear anybody say, I don't want to change the subject when that was true? I mean, what do you say if you want to change the subject? I don't want to change the subject, but I'm changing the subject, dude. Pay attention, right? So when you say to someone, you know, that's a great idea, but you have killed that idea as surely as if you said, we ain't gonna do that, right? Now consider this. Someone comes to you where you work and they have an idea, or let's put the shoe on the other foot. Let's say you go to your boss at work and you have an idea that could make the company a lot of money or make more creativity or help us do a better job or whatever, and your boss says to you, you know, that's a good idea, but your idea is dead, right? It's dead on arrival. What if your boss said to you, well, all right, so let's go back just a minute. That's a good idea, but we can't afford it, right? Idea is dead. Now consider this. That's a good idea, and we have to figure out how to pay for it. You see the difference? Yes, but kills it. Yes, and opens the possibility for all kinds of further discussion, right? Now we can talk about how we're going to afford it, and we may decide we can't. But at least we talked about it, right? Because someone said yes and rather than yes but. So that's the first principle. It's a fundamental principle, and here's how it works in improvisational comedy. I walk onto the stage and someone says to me, hello, Grandma. I can't say I'm not your grandma, I'm your grandpa. I mean, duh, look at the beard. No, but what happens and where the comedy comes from is when I say yes and. So I walk on and somebody says, hi, Grandma, and I say, well, hello there, Sonny, how you doing? Did you get that pie I baked for you last week? And he says, yes, and, right, I got the pie, Grandma, and it made me sick. Okay, so now we have begun to build a scene simply because we say yes and that's the secret for all the improv that you see. That's how it works. People accept an offer and add to it. The offer being, you're the grandma, I don't deny it, I accept that offer and I add to it, I made you a pie. So that's the first principle of improv, and I think you can see that that's going to be important whatever your line of work is. Now the second rule of improv is make your partner look good. Wow. Can you imagine working in an organization in which every member of that organization had as their #2 goal to make everybody else in that organization look good, right? How would you like to work at that place? And it can be done, right? That's what we train people to do when we use improvisational training. We help you learn to make your partner look good. Now the third rule of improv is really kind of simple too, and that is trust yourself. We all grew up as improvisers. When you were a kid, you were in the backyard and somebody said, okay, I'll be the mom and you be the dad, and boom, you improvised the whole afternoon. You made up stuff, you were creative, and all of the exciting things that you came up with because you were playing yes and as a child, you were doing improv as a child, we all did improv as a child. And then at some point, we decided, you know, I'm not sure I should say that. Or what if I look dumb? Oh, I don't want to do that, that might not work, right? And we stifle ourselves. I don't think we want to completely kill that little man or woman that sits on our shoulder and says, don't do that. But I think we really need to stifle it and be willing to take a chance, take a risk, trust yourself. So, 3 rules of improvisation, and those 3 rules are relevant to every walk of life. So, first rule is yes and. Second rule, make your partner look good. And the third rule, I've said it all kinds of different ways, but trust yourself. Take a risk, right? So, let's pretend that you have hired me to do some improvisational training for this group today. And by the way, that's not a bad idea. Did you notice, by the way, I do run a business. It's called Laugh to Learn. I have my company shirt on today. It's got my little logo right here on the collar. I require all of my employees to wear this shirt when they go out into the field to make presentations or to teach or to meet people. The only employee I have is me. But when you see this shirt, you might think that this is not just some weird old man working out of his spare bedroom, which it is. But so what, right? Okay, so we're going to work here today, and what we always do in improvisational training is we begin with a warm-up. So for our warm-up today, I'd like everyone to stand up, please. And I'm going to teach you 3 things. And the first thing I'm going to teach you is tiger. And here's the way tiger goes. Roar! Everybody, tiger. Roar! Oh, come on. Tiger. Roar! Very good. And the second thing we're going to learn is human being. How you doing? Right? How you doing? You got to get that sort of East Coast accent into it, right? So, human is how you doing? And finally, we're going to learn fireworks. I don't know if you're aware of it, but I fought fireworks, consumer fireworks in our city last year. Wasn't completely successful, but at any rate, this is different fireworks. Here we go. This is fireworks. Boom. Ooh. Ah. All right, ready? Fireworks. Boom. Ooh. Ah. All right, let's review. Tiger. Human. How are you doing? Fireworks. Boom. Ah. All right, find a partner. Everybody has a partner? Find a partner. You guys can be partners. Marshall. Hold on, he's doing. All right. So everybody who doesn't have a partner, raise your hand. Right back there, Mr. President. Oh wait, you got one? Okay, if somebody doesn't have a partner, come up here and be my partner. Hi, Grace, how you doing? I know this lady. All right, so here's what we're going to do. We're going to stand back to back with our partner. On the count of 3, we are either going to do tiger, fireworks, or human. The idea being to do the same thing. Now, no pausing to wait to see what your partner's going to do. It has to be instantaneous. Immediately on 3, you turn around and we do tiger, fireworks, or human. Ready? Here we go. 1, 2, 3. Improv comedy, or of improv-based training, is that we don't tell people what you're supposed to learn. We let people tell us what they learned. Because what you discover yourself, you're going to remember and apply much more quickly than something someone told you. So at the end of every exercise, we do a little feedback, a little debriefing, and it usually starts like this. How do you feel? Good. All right. What just happened?
We had fun.
We had fun. We laughed. What else?
We got involved.
We got involved, right? What else just happened? Pardon me?
Very predictable.
It was very predictable. Some people are very predictable. All right? And then, just very, very briefly, is there anything that we just learned that is applicable to you where you live and work? And what would that be? Yes?
Sales motivation.
Yes.
Yes.
Yes. What else?
When you're behind a microphone, you can make people do almost anything.
That's true, but I will tell you that there's another secret to this. Once we have laughed like that together, I can now really get you to do anything because you feel safer because you've laughed and you've had interaction and so on. So that's one reason why we always begin with a warm-up exercise to get everybody relaxed, laughing and having a good time, because then you will do whatever I tell you to do and be happy about it. And here's what I'm going to tell you to do. The next exercise we're going to do is an exercise in yes and. At each table, you will find a piece of my letterhead, okay? Is there at least one pen or pencil at each table? Is there any table that doesn't have a pen or just need one? Doesn't have a pen or a pencil? Everybody have a writing instrument at your table? All right, this is an exercise in yes and creativity. What you are going to do at each table is draw a picture of a monster. You're going to create a monster right at your table. Now here are the rules for creating that monster. Each person will make one mark and only one mark on the paper, right? It can be a circle, a square, a wiggly line, whatever you want to, but it'll be one mark. You then pass the paper to the next person who makes another single mark on the paper. And you keep passing it around quietly now. Nobody, oh, that's not right, or that looks like an eye. None of that. This is yes and. I accept what you put on the paper and I'm adding to it, right? You pass that around the table until you feel like you have created a satisfactory monster. When the paper comes to you and you feel it is a satisfactory monster, then you will write one letter on the paper. That letter is the first name of the monster. You pass it to the next person who writes another letter until your monster is named, all right? So each table will create a monster. You will do it by each person making one mark and then passing it on to the next person. No talking, just create a monster. Go. No talking. One mark, no talking. Everybody just makes one mark.
That's lifting the pen.
Yeah. Until you lift the pin. These are truly amazing. I do this in very many cases, and I'm telling you, the monsters that I see just blow me away. They're big acts.
We're doing until somebody decides the first letter. Then you put the letter on.
Yes and. Yes and.
That's right, yes and. I'm accepting what you just do and I'm going to add to it. Now when the monster comes to you and you think it's complete, write the first letter of its name.
writes a letter, but the next person doesn't think the response is complete, they have to add a letter?
Yeah, probably.
Okay, so one person dictates the end development of the monster.
All righty, so how many people have not completed your monster? All right. Now then, take a look at your monster. I want you to think about this honestly. Could any one of you at your table, acting on your own, have done anything half this creative and clever? No. Yeah? Where's that man? I want to see him. This, my friends, is the power of yes and. I don't know if I mentioned when I was talking earlier, but I know I mentioned to your president. When I was at the AIN conference in San Francisco, we took a field trip to Stanford University. You guys have heard of that school, right? Stanford University. At Stanford University, improv is an approved elective in every major. And it is a required course in the design school. Why is that? Because yes and stimulates creativity. And that's what I think you have just demonstrated today with some dang fine monsters. All right, questions? Anybody have any questions? I promised I'd have you out of here by 1 o'clock, and we got about 6 minutes for any questions you may have. I was instructed to allow time for questions, and I did. Yes.
What's the most fun group that you've ever worked with in training?
The most fun group I've ever worked with in training.
Rotary.
Rotary. You know, several years ago, believe it or not, I don't know if it's the most fun. I really kind of hate to say, you know, something's the most fun. Probably the most challenging and the most surprising were sheriff's office captains.
Oh, yeah.
Sheriff Barta hired me. We did 4 hours of training. It was the first time I ever trained people, all of whom were packing heat. I was very kind and gentle. I didn't criticize. Well, you talk about yes and. When somebody's got an automatic pistol on their whip and they say, "Shall we do this?" You go, "Yes, and what?" Yeah, but I think that was one of the more fun and challenging groups. We did 4 hours. And the goal, and what I do in the training is if someone wants to talk to me about training, I ask, how will your people be different when this training is over? Because we can modify what we do. There are scores, literally scores of games and exercises that we can use, all of which are used for multiple purposes. So with Sheriff Barta, he said, I want my captains to feel like they belong to a good sheriff's department, not a good patrol division. And in other words, he wanted to break down silos. And working together and playing together, you know, guys that depend on each other but never meet, you do tend to get a little silo-y. But if you have played the Tiger Fireworks Human with somebody, you may feel like you know them a little better, right? And be a little bit more willing to walk down the hall to their office and say, here's what we want to do. So yeah, I don't know who's the most fun. I've really done a lot of people, but Shawnee County Sheriff's was probably the biggest challenge, and it was, in my opinion, and Sheriff Barta's as well, was very successful. Any other questions? Yes?
How many do you have in your senior class?
Senior class right now has about 11, and we do presentations 4 times at Civic Theater, And then we also are available for parties and conferences and so on. All of the members of senior class are volunteers. We do all of our volunteer time. People asked me, I had a call just the other day, someone wanted us to come and do a gig, and how much do we charge? And what we do is we ask that people make a donation to Civic Theater in our name in whatever manner you think is appropriate. But yeah, senior class is available. And it's fun too. The thing with senior class is improv's always fun, but when you see a bunch of old geezers doing this stuff, we're not supposed to be able to be quick on our feet, right? And to be creative. But we're improvisers, and we can, and it does sort of give the lie to aging stereotypes. You may not believe it, but I'm over 50. And 60, and 70. Any other questions? Well, thank you very much for having me. I hope you had a
That was a delight, Marvin. Thank you for your time and the presentation today. In your honor, we award a speaker book to the Ross Elementary Library, and we would ask you to sign the nameplate in this. Today's book is Survival is No Game, Horizon, and it's a #1 New York Times bestseller.
I'll be delighted, thank you. My real name?
Next week's meeting is right back here in the Cap Plaza, but we're in the Emerald Room. Our program will be Shannon Riley from Topeka Civic Theater and Academy. And while we're at it, let's give Stan a great round of applause for starting us off with some fun speakers this year. Please remember that teen training in Lawrence is free, and please remember to sign up for the free training and free opportunity at free Bloody Marys and mimosas if you'd like to go. They're free. It's all free training.
For the server.
Yes, and.
So is it free?
And it is free.
Okay.
Yes, and it's free. And I was instructed that from the podium I can't do more than the 4-way test. So what we can do as a club is break the rules a little bit, and I'm going to say the 4-way test and then just kind of nod and pause, and I think we ought to do the half that way. And so officially, let's do the 4-way test. Please stand and we'll conclude our meeting. Of the things we think, say, or do, is it the truth?